Howdy everyone, it's Al with Longoriahaus here with Mandy. Good to see you guys again. It's been a few weeks, and if this is your first time here, this is my live question and answer show where you ask your dog training questions and then I give you detailed answers to help you raise a happy and reliable dog. So we've got quite a few questions that we've got in from anywhere from Facebook's questions, Instagram questions, questions from your Echo devices, and of course, you're more than welcome to ask any question that you would like to know about. If you don't know who I am, my name is Al Longoria. I'm a dog trainer in the Houston area. I've been training dogs for 14 years. I've been a professional dog trainer for 9 years now. Primarily what I do is I go into people's homes and I get their dogs started in obedience training, among other things. But then I coach the living heck out of them so that way when I'm done with my job, they know what to do without having to ever hire another professional again. So really passionate about what I do. Love all you guys. If you're watching right now, hey, thanks so much for your attention. It really means the world to me. But this is the time for you to be able to ask your questions. I love to do these things. And so I'm going to make sure, does it look like it's going well on there? Yep, so it's playing there. We always want to make sure that these are going well because technically it's such a challenge for us to pull these off. But hey, if you are watching this now or in the future, it means the world to me when you leave a thumbs up. If I give a piece of advice and you want to know and you appreciate it, make sure you give us a thumbs up. Share this on Facebook, share this on anywhere that you can possibly share. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so that way you know whenever these live videos are coming out. So hey, ask your questions whenever you're ready, but we're ready. We've got quite a list, and I'd like to get going. So Mandy, what is question number 1?
Okay, Laura asked this question about anxiety. What if the anxiety is caused by something out of my control, like thunder? How can I reward or condition calmness during something like that?
You know, I see, we were talking about this, about anxiety, and anxiety is one of those things that dogs really struggle with. Let me just give you my definition of anxiety, and yes, there are other ones, but here's the way that I look at anxiety as a definition. It means that you're looking into the future and you're anticipating something bad happening to you, okay? And so dogs are not immune from anxiety. Obviously, many dogs suffer from separation anxiety. So if you're crating your dog and then you leave the room and then the dog begins to destroy the crate, that can be a very, very dangerous thing. We've had quite a few videos going over that on our different channels, but like Laura was asking here, what in the world do you actually do when the thing that your dog is becoming anxious of actually isn't under your control? Well, so I'll give some insight here. Laura actually said that it was thunder and lightning. So no, you can't control the lightning. If you can, then you're Zeus. But, right? So yeah, you can't control the lightning. But what you can do is you can turn your home into the situations that it's thundering. Okay, many of us, especially if you're watching this, especially if you're watching this, you've got a phone, you've got a television, you've got some kind of device. Maybe you even have speakers in your home that you can play thunder sounds. So what I recommend is conditioning your dog when you're actually using your speaker system to those types of sounds. So like, what do you mean? Well, how do I condition my dog? Well, let's get real specific. Get your dog to do something that's actually useful for them. So what you're trying to get your dog to do is to calm down. And literally when you hear the word calm down, you should think of your dog in the down position, okay? So you would play some thunder, like a thunder soundtrack on your speakers, and then you would begin the exercise of teaching your dog to go into the down, and you would begin to show them how comfortable and relaxing it was. Just imagine you put the dog in the down, the thunder is going off, maybe at a low level on day 1, and you're giving them a really nice massage. you're probably going to need a leash in the beginning to kind of help direct them and kind of show them how to deal with the little bit of anxiety that they might have over it. But what you'll do is gradually over the course of a week or of a couple of weeks, you'll begin to prepare your dog for the eventuality of the thunderstorm actually happening. Now, I have seen some cases, and this isn't always common, but I have seen some cases where I've used a remote collar at a lower level for dogs that are struggling with something like that in their crate. But you can also maybe use the remote collar just a little bit, not too high, but definitely not low, that whenever they start to go into this little anxious state of mind, you could put a little mental block saying, I don't want you to go any further, and then immediately go back into working the dog. What I wouldn't do is, let's just say the dog is in the bed and they begin to get a little anxious. I wouldn't use the remote collar there to get them to go quiet. Rather, what I would do is probably grab my leash, take the dog fully off the bed, remote collar somewhat high of a low level, and then press the button, send them over to the bed to have them feel some pressure. They do the thing that you want, and then the pressure relaxes, and that relaxation signal actually tells your dog to become calmer. So you kind of got to get a little, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but you have to get a little creative at how do I simulate the environment that my dog is afraid of. And then the next thing that I would recommend is that make sure that when the real event happens, that you're kind of acting nonchalant about it. You're not actually adding to the dog's anxiety. As a matter of fact, this week I had a client that we're working with her dogs on some anxious behaviors. And she told me that whenever she showed up at the office and the dog began to get anxious, she said, well, I was also a little anxious too. Mm-hmm. And she said, once I began to calm down, I knew that my dog was actually going to follow suit. So make sure that you're calm yourself. You're not adding any extra energy to it. Make sure that you're actually getting your dog to do something that they previously learned, and that's going to set you up for some success. Okay? All right, what's next?
Okay, Kevin asked, can you further define the term punishment? As a leader, how should I define it?
Hey, it's a good question too. So what in the world is punishment? So punishment by definition is anything that we do that reduces the rate of a behavior. You know, a lot of people think that punishment is bad, but like evil is bad, right? Mm-hmm. But punishment is not bad in the sense that we're using it to reduce the rate of things that we don't want. So like, should you punish laziness? Well, yeah, like you shouldn't be lazy. You should get up every day and go do something that you love, right? So there are certain things that you should punish. So how can you further define the term punishment? Well, very basically, like I said, it's anything that reduces the rate of a behavior. What is a behavior? It's anything that you can actually see the dog doing. It occupies space and it occupies time, right? So that's the definition of punishment. However, here you said, okay, as a leader, how should I define it? And this is the real question. One of the things I've started telling my clients when I come into y'all's homes about punishment and about your dogs is that I'm going to give you all this head knowledge about how to reward, good techniques, how to set up a situation. But at the end of the day, truly defining reinforcement and truly defining punishment is about knowing the individual that's with you. So like, Mandy, for example, Mandy, would you rather eat, chicken, or would you rather eat beef, or would you have lamb, or would you eat oysters, or would you have salmon? Like, heck, I don't know. I don't know what any of those. Beef. Okay, that was pretty easy. So guys, Mandy likes beef, right? Mm-hmm. Next, so hey, what is it that you don't like? I know plenty of things that Mandy doesn't like. That doesn't take very long to figure out. So you have to kind of be in some kind of relationship to define as a leader. So if you're leading somebody, like I know, so Mandy works for me. I know that she would not like for me not to pay her. That would probably punish the rate of her work. She would work less for me if I didn't pay. She probably wouldn't work at all, right?
Yeah, then you would be punished.
Yeah, I would be punished, right? So as a leader, how do you define punishment? You have to actually get in the trenches with your dog and find out, who are you? What brings you pleasure? What brings you comfort? That's the reinforcement side. And then the other side, the punishment side, is how do I How do I frustrate you effectively? How do I make you uncomfortable effectively? You do those things, you use frustration and discomfort, which are just incredible parts of our brain, and then they're going to help the dog to understand what things should I not do. So when you're thinking about your dog misbehaving, you actually have to put yourself in the frame, kind of in a duplicitous frame of mind. And what I mean by that is you got to both be thinking about where is the boundary and how do I effectively punish, because you got to create boundaries. But then you also have to be all about creating the habit, which is pleasure and comfort and hope and all these wonderful things for the dog to know that. So get into a relationship with your dog, figure out who they are, and that's how you're going to lead them best. Okay.
Well, the next question is, when using a slip leash collar, do you give a little tug after you say the command, like quiet, or do you use it to draw their attention to you?
I think it's circumstantial, okay? But if you're having a dog, like I'm thinking
I
this
think
question,
this was with
like
the barking, with using the collar correct.
Yeah, I
barking.
think somebody was. So the dog is barking excessively, okay? Well, this goes back to what I just said about punishment, okay? You've had, I think, two or three different techniques right there. And the thing is you've got to use maybe tightening it for 2 or 3 seconds, maybe popping it, maybe pulling the dog away. All those are things that could possibly help you, because let's just say that the dog is barking excitedly at another dog, and you pull on the leash and you take the dog away from that by definition is frustrating for the dog because they didn't get to go and engage with that thing. And let's just say it's not aggressive. They're just barking because they're excited. They want to play with that dog. So if you frustrate them enough, they will eventually learn over time that, hey, they're not going to let me go over there and play. They're going to try pretty hard, but eventually you will give up and understand that, hey, this is not going to work for me. Now, if it's aggression, I'm going to tell you a little story about how I dealt with Gabby, and this is with a different tool. So, Gabby was, I think she was like 14 weeks old. 14 weeks old, we're out in front of my house, we're walking, and Gabby sees a family walking with their dog, and Gabby all of a sudden starts barking, and I had just a flat, I had a martingale collar on. It's just a flat little collar that has a chain on it, guys, for those of y'all that don't know. So Gabby started barking, and I had no way in that moment, knowing who Gabby was, I had no way in the moment of telling her, like, hey, you can't do that. So the next day, I asked those people to come back. So the next day we're back out there. I actually had a prong collar that day. It's the only time I used a prong collar on Gabby in the first year of her life. So we're going out there. They're walking at the same time of day. Gabby decides to do the same thing. And at that very moment that she barks, I popped the collar very quickly. It was intended to be uncomfortable. But at that moment, Gabby immediately stopped barking. I guessed right. I guessed that, hey, this is going to clearly communicate to my very young puppy, do not bark at them. And then we went happily on our walk, and I continued to reward her for all the things that I wanted to do. So when it comes to the slip leash, try different things. The firmest that I would recommend being with a slip leash or a slip collar is if the dog begins to bark, I would tighten it for 3 seconds. 3 seconds is a long time, and I wouldn't do that on any collar that's any thinner than 3/8 of an inch. If you go real thin, as a matter of fact, I grabbed one of these because I think it's a good point to bring this up. I got these a few weeks ago. This little slip leash, and it is super thin. You take a look at it. You take a look at that, and I'll tell you that if you go and you put this on a dog, and you tighten that up for 3 seconds, it is a ton of pressure on the dog, especially if it's up that high. So I don't actually recommend using something this thin to ever correct a dog. It's really used more for leash guidance if you're going to use it this way. So If you're using your slip collar, your slip leash to apply pressure and it's thinner than something like this, then I really just don't recommend doing that. If it's 3/8, if it's 1/2 inch, then those collars are actually not bad at all for doing that. But going tight on a collar like that for prolonged period of time, oh yeah, now she's excited. For prolonged periods of time can actually be detrimental. All right, you gotta get down. Okay, yeah, we know you love her. Okay, all right.
She wants to take my place.
Yeah, but she can't
Too
talk.
bad you can't
Yeah,
read
if you
and
can't
talk,
read
Daddy.
it. You can't read and talk, right? But you're being a good
That
dog.
would be a great show.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. We would have thousands and thousands of viewers watching the show. Okay. So what's next on the list?
Okay. My dog is not very good at sit or down. What can I do?
What do you think, Mandy? What do you think you should do? It's a one-word answer. Practice. That's it. If your dog is not very good, if your dog is not very good at something, like I'm not very good at some things, and the way that you get better at anything is just by practicing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, hey, it's not a bad idea. Like, before you start practicing, how are your techniques? Are your techniques actually any good? How patient are you with yourself? How patient are you with your dog? Are you setting yourself up for a situation to where it's easy, or a circumstance where it's easy to actually get the dog to do what you want him to do? So, like, one thing that I could recommend, and yeah, heck, I'm glad it's here. I've got, my dog's crack right here.
Yeah,
Red
that's
Barn,
puppy crack.
Red Barn beef roll is just an incredible. Yep, here she comes. Hey, go back to your bed. Go to your bed. You have this, Red Barn beef roll is really an incredible high value reward for a dog. So in those situations where you're having a hard time getting your dog to do the things that you ask, are you associating something that they absolutely adore and helping them understand that you want them to do it for that, and start getting repetitions? This brings up another point, that if you're bringing value and it's something that the dog thoroughly enjoys, run some drills. I'm just thinking about me. Like, if you guys have been following my Instagram stories, some of y'all know that I've been in the gym. I've been in the gym for 10 consecutive weeks now. I'm very happy about the progress that I'm making. And I was thinking maybe a couple of weeks back, I did something in push-ups that I hadn't been able to do in a while. But now that I kind of crossed that threshold, I'm really seeing a lot of growth in the push-ups, that they're just getting easier and easier and easier every time I go. So the real answer to anything that you're struggling with is, first, take a look at your techniques, make sure that your dog is properly motivated, and then finally just start getting after it by drilling and going repeatedly at it, and then there's almost no way that you can't get good at it.
Okay.
Okay, all right, what's next?
Someone asked, how do I stop my dog from digging?
And this is another real cliche thing that I've heard in the past. If you want your dog to stop, sniffing the dirt, getting into the grass and doing things, like if it's on the walk or it's on the backyard and they're digging, you got to find something that's more interesting than dirt. And dirt to a dog is a pretty interesting thing. So what do? Well, the first thing that I recommend, especially for any of these herding dogs, but man, even the terrier group, man, they're really good with this. Get you a toy that act like a ball. Get you some kind of big ball. The Jolly Ball on a rope is fantastic. I don't have one here, man, but the Jolly Ball on a rope, you can probably find that on Amazon or on Chewy. Man, it is a great toy. If you put that toy back there, then yeah, the dog is probably more likely to do it. But now that I'm kind of thinking like, hey, that toy's really good, I'm thinking of something that's actually just even better. Obviously, we have our flirt pole, and that's not what I was thinking of, but now that crossed my mind. The thing that's best to get your dog to stop from digging is you. Go back there with your dog. Go back there with your dog and do something with them. We have a real simple game that we play with dogs, especially if you have a nice grassy backyard. Play the treat toss game with them. Get a nice sized piece of food, okay, not the tiny, tiny kibble, but something maybe a little bit bigger than your standard piece of kibble, and begin to toss one piece at a time. Get your dog to go root around for it in the grass, and then call your dog back, and then feed them by hand when they come back. Yes, they're going to stick their nose in the ground. That's why you throw one piece. But then when they're coming running back to you, you give them another one. And now you're interacting with your dog. And so that's a really great way to go to maybe teach your dog to maybe pay more attention to you than all the other things that are going on in the yard. But your dog is just looking for things to do. If there's nothing else to do, then the dirt becomes really interesting because they're driven by their nose. They're gonna find something down there that that their nose is telling them is fantastic.
Some dogs like to dig up worms and eat them.
I think I was on some dog trainer forum or dog training group on Facebook the other day, and we were looking at these terriers. I forget which terrier it was, but they were like burrowed in the ground like 6 feet to get after all sorts of vermin and rodents. I'm like, man, that's just incredible. These dogs' tenacity to get down there. So you got to have something that's pretty powerful. And dirt, like I said, dirt is pretty powerful to the dog. So get back there in your backyard with your dog. Begin to show them what it is that you do want them to do. Keep your leash, keep some food, keep a toy like the Jolly Ball, and I think those are good ways to go about helping you there. All right, what's next?
Next question is, how do I stop my dog from barking?
Yeah, that's like, I think that has to be the single most popular dog question. And I like my answer to how do I stop my dog from barking. The way that I stop my dog from barking is different than what anybody else really does. The way that I stop my dog from barking is first teaching them to bark. I like to actually teach the dog to become aware of their barking, because then when they become aware of the barking, then they're also aware of what the difference is. And I can use that quite well. I think of a real easy way to teach a dog to bark is to actually frustrate them for something that they really love, get them to bark and toss them a piece of food. And then you get to use your leash, right? So you have this piece of food, and you tell the dog to bark, the dog barks, you throw it the piece of food. But then maybe you begin to tease them with a piece of food and they bark, and you didn't tell them bark, then they get the leash. And then the leash tightens up a little bit. They're like, oh, they're not going to throw me that because they didn't say the word. Now, these are really kind of, you really have to be pretty involved to teach a dog to not bark the way that I'm suggesting. But isn't that what it's all about, is actually having a dog and being in a relationship with them and teaching them about who they are and what they can be? Because sure enough, you can slap on a bark collar or a remote collar, turn the volume up, and tell them not to do it that way. And I'm not going to say that that's not a way that you should go about doing it. That's the shortest path to get the dog to stop barking. But what's going to be the best path for your dog to not think that you're a jerk? Well, if you're using the remote collar to correct every single last thing that your dog is doing, then you're a tyrant. So you need to actually give your dog some freedoms, right? Now, excessive barking is a problem. So set the dog up in a situation when they can bark and you tell them that it's good, but then be clear, use the quiet command with your leash. And when they bark excessively, put some pressure down the leash, get them away from the thing that they're doing. And then when they become quiet, then you can begin to calmly reward them. I think that's a fantastic way to go. But if your dog is an extremely excessive barker, the bark collar and a remote collar will work. Get involved with your dog. Teach them when it's acceptable to bark. Reinforce that. Teach them when it's too much. Make sure you add a word. Make sure you have a training collar or a training leash to help your dog understand the difference. And then also reinforce that in a way that helps the dog learn even better. Okay, next.
How early should I start house training my puppy?
When I was first thinking this, I was just thinking like the jerk answer is like right now is the answer. Like immediately is when you need to start this. But really, like, when do you need to actually start? When do you actually need to start that? Well, I'm going to venture to say that probably at 7 weeks. What do you think? I was thinking for like 5 seems a little too early. Like five wouldn't be a bad idea to have the puppies out in like a puppy yard and using the restroom inside of a playpen.
Because generally people don't get puppies.
They don't. Yeah, but if you're a breeder, if you're a breeder watching this, you might be thinking that it's a good time. You've got these puppies. You're raising them. You're weaning them. And so now it's maybe week 5, maybe week 6 is time to, take them out in the yard and have them to begin to go over the top of grass instead of inside of a home. Heck, if you're going to have one of these really small breeds of dogs that routinely end up living in high-rise apartments or living in metropolitan areas, maybe that's not a bad time to start introducing them to the potty pads at week 5. So that way they can begin to make those associations, because the mom should be out like they're close to weaned at 5 weeks. I think 6 maybe they are weaned. I don't have a lot of experience with that, but I think somewhere there.
6.
But if you're a pet owner, let's say that you've rescued a dog, you've bought a dog from a breeder, you've obtained the dog. I think that you should start potty training the dog the day that you get it. Yes, there's some special circumstances. Like people rescue dogs, and sometimes you folks will run into a dog at 5 or 6 weeks or something like that, very young puppies. But in general, you've got a dog from a breeder or rescue. 8 weeks old is the time that I would begin to teach the dog that. Just remember, when you're potty training the dog, make it really obvious to the dog exactly where you want them to go, and then use your crate smartly. You put them inside the crate after they've consumed food and water to begin to teach their tiny little bladders how to hold it, and and going from there. Okay, next.
How do I teach my dog to behave during a party?
Well, I don't want to call this a party because it's not necessarily one, but the way that you do it is the way that we're doing it right now. We're in my dining room. And over this way, I've got Gabby down on a bed, and then back behind me, Fritz is lying down on the cool tile. And they're not necessarily under command, but they are under one of their habits. They're performing the habits that I have them do. Like Mandy's been coming over for, we've been friends for over a year now. How often have you seen this picture of Gabby like being down there?
Every time.
Yeah, every time you come, right? And I don't always tell her to go there. I did right now earlier. I did tell her to go there earlier. So the way that you actually get your dog to behave when you're having a whole bunch of people over is not with any special kind of command, but through the power of habit. Teaching your dog that, hey, every single time that people come over, we're going to ask you to do the same exact thing, and it's ultimately going to lead to reward. But yes, if you decide to not do it, you can sometimes get in trouble for not doing the things that we ask. So having those habits can really be very useful, because then it's almost kind of automatic. Like here, I left my dogs out for the show today, and I'm really not interact with them. They came over here, wanted to check us out earlier. But you get your dog to behave in social situations with the habits that they already have. If your dog doesn't have those habits, the best place to start is with a play stay. I tell this to a lot of my friends. Maybe you watch a TV show, maybe you have a Bible study, maybe you have a book club. You have something going at your house where people not in your family are coming over. This is a good time to practice what it is that you've been teaching your dog during the week. And so that's one of the reasons I like having these live shows, because they allow me to kind of see where my dogs are at in the things that I'm teaching you guys on a daily basis. So use those habits, and I think that they will do wonderful for you. And if you're needing help, of course, I'm always here to answer those. Well, as long as I'm alive,
Yeah.
All right, what's next?
How do I make my dog come to me when she's off leash?
It's the same thing there again. Getting your dog to come to you when they're off leash is a matter of habit. But the process that I use, and I don't talk about it enough, but I'm going to tell you guys, because I get these questions, texted to me, during the day and during the week, is that people are saying like, hey Al, my dog isn't coming to me, and the dog still has its puppy teeth in its head. And I'm just like, well, I practiced for 8 months before I expect any kind of reliability from the dog. And the way that I train a dog is I first make the associations that turning around and coming back are particularly amazing. I use their food. I use toys that we make for them. I use a leather rag that they come and bite, and we play a tug game. Heck, they come back to me and we wrestle on the floor. There's all these things that we're doing to teaching the value of turning around and coming back. And then at some point, for some of you guys, we use a leash. the dog kind of, wanders off from you. And then I put a little tug on the leash when I say their name, and the dog comes back, and I reward them there. So I keep doing things like that and helping the dog. But this is, when I think about this for you guys, I don't use that technique. But when I think about that with you guys, I think you should be doing that with your 7 and 8 month old puppy. Like if you get an 8-week-old, you start training with us, you're playing the treat toss game on a daily basis, the dog's getting it, you're throwing a ball and they're bringing it back to you in your home and in your yard, that's good. Then you get to 7 and 8 months, and then you have your long leash, and then you're out in the neighborhood, the dog is walking away from you, then you use your leash and call your dog back, you start to do that. And then, at some point at 8 months, my dogs pretty much are going to get corrected, because I'm going to put them in a situation where they've seen, all these recalls. At 10 months, I meant to say, at 10 months, we've been calling them every day to come to us for value. We've been putting a little pressure on the leash. And then all of a sudden, we're going to put you in a situation where there's something that's more interesting than we are. The dog's going to decide that, hey, I'm going to go after that. And then you're going to get in trouble. And I pause there because that's one repetition where I'm going to make sure that you get in trouble, that was preceded by probably 3,000 to 5,000 repetitions of that it's incredibly valuable to come back to me. And I think that as you show the dog that it's always valuable, but yes, if you disobey the thing that I've been showing you every day for 8 months, that yes, you can and will get in trouble. And that's how I do it. I use a remote collar. I think it's a great way to go because there's no risk for injury. But I tend to be firmer with that than I would be with like a prong collar, just because there's no risk for injury, and it can be very clear that, hey, I called you, you chose not to come, this is the consequence for that particular thing. So that's how you get your dog to reliably come to you, is by bringing a lot of value and then defining a clear boundary of why they should have done the thing that they knew they should have done in the first place. All right, looks we got one more. This is great.
Yeah, last question. Okay, so how do I get my dog to be less prey-driven with birds and rabbits?
I'll tell you, this is a great question, because both of my dogs are particularly prey-driven. And the way that I've always handled prey drive with the dogs is kind of the way that I deal with it, like on the Coming When Called. But really what I want to do for the dogs, and this is special, I guess, about folks that do what I do, like with protection dogs or sport protection dogs, is that, man, we are just playing a ton of tug. We're playing tug, and the dogs are like, wow, man, I just love to play with you. And so I'll put a leash on a dog, and like we go to Crosby Park all the time. So we go to this public park, the dogs are there with us, there's the squirrels, there's the birds, but man, I have this fantastic tug game, and the dog is like, man, I wouldn't want to do anything other than that. So yeah, like for sure, there's going to be people that are going to tell you, and there's dog trainers out there that are going to say, hey, you should punish the dog whenever they go, after another creature in prey. I'm like, sure, yeah, like I don't disagree with that, but I think 97.5% of what you should be doing is actually rewarding the dog with a game that's based on prey, tug, chasing a ball, chasing pieces of food in your hand, whatever the dog happens to like and whatever you happen to be good at. And heck, if you're practicing that, then the dog's gonna be like, man, I wouldn't rather do anything else. As a matter of fact, when I go and compete with my dogs, and particularly Gabby, we're going to be competing again here in the near future. Everything leading up to the competition will be about me making sure that she is playing with me at an epic level. I want her to understand that the game that I'm going to play is the best thing that can possibly happen in her life. And so that's really, I think, is the way to go and get your dog to become less prey driven towards things you want, because you want to direct all that prey drive at yourself. Yeah, I just had one more thing that I was going to cover, and then we can wrap up, man. We got lots of stuff to do. Yeah, one thing that I wanted to talk about just for a second. I brought both of these bowls out because I thought it would be valuable for you guys to see. We've been getting questions from people about how do I slow my dog down when What are you doing?
You got the food bowls out.
Yeah, you got the food bowls. Is that some kind of association to you that you like the food bowl? So look, Gabby's a dog that eats. Hey, lay down. Gabby's a dog that eats particularly fast. And so I feed Gabby in a bowl like this. So what I'm going to be talking about is dogs. Some dogs eat very, very rapidly, and the reason that I brought both of these down, both of these out, is if you have a very rapid, a dog that eats rapidly, and you're feeding out of something like this, like we feed Gabby about 3 cups a day, this is not the bowl to feed your rapid eater out of. Something that's much wider, like the bowl that you're seeing here, that's actually a good way to go about slowing your dog down. You know, previously I'd said that, hey, you know, you can take the food and put it on the floor and spread it out. But bowls like this do a nice job of slowing the dog down enough. Now, there are other bowls that I've seen that are like this, that are like slow feeders, and they'll have these little channels that the dog has to kind of get in and work the food out. But if you've got a dog that's eating particularly fast, this is not the bowl for you. But a bowl like this is really something that you should consider. Now, if your dog has any kind of unwanted behaviors or is not performing quite up to your standard, then hey, it's a great idea to get really into hand feeding your dog. And then instead of a bowl, you probably want to have a treat pouch like this one. These are the ones that we ask our clients to get. This is what I wear to work every day that I go. And it's just a fantastic way to get involved with your dog, because the fact that, you know, when you're carrying a treat pouch, you're keeping it behind your back and you're regularly rewarding your dog, you're going to control the rate of how fast they're eating and prevent any unnecessary things. All right, well, I'm done. I don't have anything else. Is there anything that you can think of? Okay, well guys, hey, we appreciate each and every one of y'all. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and be sure to hit that notification bell. Thanks for all your questions. Have a great night. Take care.